Eggman's video game. I actually didn't know this was the finale when I first watched this episode. There have been plenty of epic series episodes before this point, and it's not like it ended with Eggman being killed or turned good and Warbot joining Sonic, so it's not a proper finale. But that's what happens when a show doesn't know it's at its last episode. We start out with Sonic driving a race car through the canyon again, and it briefly goes into the air just to harmlessly move around a bit and land normally. He races with Tails, who's driving a minivan, while Knuckles is holding onto something and getting dragged along, and he keeps getting smacked into stuff. Not that his so-called friends care. I love that he's getting punishment for being an awful portrayal of Knuckles, and that Tails' van matches his fur. Then Amy calls Sonic on his communicator saying she's all out of eggs, and Sonic takes it completely seriously and drives off as if it was something important. Wait, why didn't he just immediately run at the speed of sound to immediately get her errand completed in seconds? That's the natural result of Eggman not being in charge. The heroes' lives are too boring. Because of Sonic, Eggman gets splashed with mud, and he naturally sends his badniks at him with the press of a button, and conveniently goes away in his Eggmobile that he somehow had right there. Oh, he didn't go away. That makes more sense because he wanted to witness the victory. Sonic slides into some robots, and then runs in a figure eight, making them chase him until they run into each other. Then he sends one of the robots at the Eggmobile, and Eggman crashes into the village, and people throw apples at him. He lampshades that Sonic was the one who covered him in the mud, and the people run away in fear. Eggman says he needs to improve his image to win their trust, and they all talk at once, and somehow the guy who kidnapped Sonic earlier isn't in jail for kidnapping. That's always a plot hole. They're all talking about a new Sonic game that came out, and Eggman tries to advertise an arcade machine featuring himself outside, which looks like a DOS game where Eggman walks through a level with extremely flat level design with the occasional water pits with nothing to do. I guess he didn't play his own game to see if it was good, because he wouldn't have put up with this. The heroes pass on it because of the graphics, and Tails somehow thinks all the best games use motion capture. What? What a weirdo. This is so tone deaf. Plenty of people still play retro games, including most Sonic fans, who usually just play the classic games. This was clearly written by someone who's never touched a video game in his life. All I know about the game is that it's a mandatory collectathon. That's a shame. Cool music plays as the heroes attack some robots, with Knuckles tossing one aside and then punching them with fists. And Six runs up a wall briefly and smacks it with her staff, looking cool. First she can jump super high, and now she can run up a wall? I don't even think it makes sense when Sonic does it. And Sonic homie attacks a bunch of them in a row. Oh, all cool electric guitar music plays. I always felt like the action scene music was too good for the show. I never even noticed the action scene music in Sonic X. Eggman says that what the heroes did will make a great boss battle for his game, and Sonic says that he'd feel bad about spin attacking Eggman over the horizon. He does it against his Eggmobile anyway, surprisingly, so what's the difference? But of course Eggman's not injured afterwards. Warbot then gives him an idea and isn't given the credit for it, and he wonders who he could send to defeat Sonic. Of course Shadow shows up again, thank God. Wouldn't it be great if we learned his backstory? No, skew priorities. Shadow tells him that he'll never work with them again, and I was scared that this would be the end of his appearance for the sake of a bad joke. Fortunately, Eggman makes a plan to make Sonic fight Shadow by manipulating Sonic into assaulting Shadow. Eggman asks Sonic if he thinks Shadow's cool shoes are weird looking, and Sonic says that he could take him or leave him. I guess he videotaped his response. Of course, he shows Shadow an extremely manipulated video that makes Sonic look like he's saying Shadow will never beat him. And somehow Shadow falls for it and says that this aggression can't stand and he'll pay. Well, that was amusing. I guess I'd rather Shadow be an amusing, overly violent idiot than horribly boring like usual. This show manages to make him, like, evil in a cool way, while Rise of Lyric is just an asshole. He swings Tails around entertainingly and throws him into a well. I love this. Tails needs to do way more to contribute. Shadow warps away constantly so Knuckles can't get a hit on him. Tails remembers he can fly, but then he gets sent so far away that he gets smacked into the wall, like Shadow did to him in Sonic X. Shadow hits Knuckles, and cool music with Latin chanting plays. And Shadow spins Sticks around by grabbing her staff, and Amy impressively dodges Shadow's kick. So far she's done better than any of her friends. Then he warps behind Amy and Sticks and flies into the air to drop them. It makes sense that they'd all lose to Shadow. Who wouldn't? I love that Sonic sounds so serious when he says, "What have you done?" He's so angry about it. And some trees fall over, and Sonic groans in pain. The whole time I'm wondering why Shadow took so long to fight him again instead of doing it every day. He knows where he lives. For forced comedy and a jarring tonal shift, he says something to distract him because this is Sonic Boom and gets a hit on him. And then they start running around and occasionally hitting each other. That was the most boring part of the fight. Seriously, why would anyone fight like that? This reminded me of Flynn's idea of making Scourge and Sonic fight. That's not interesting to see. Finally, they stand still and start trying to punch each other. At least Shadow got a hit in. They spin dash at each other, but then the camera goes into a bird's eye view and we see their blurs moving around. And somehow Eggman thinks that was great footage to watch, and they run into each other and then roll around with each other. Sonic finally asks Shadow why he's doing this. Shadow just says he'll pay for what he said. Sonic says he didn't say anything bad, and then Shadow figures out on his own that Eggman manipulated that footage and decides to make him pay for this. Shadow's never been this intimidating. He starts attacking Eggman's door and talks to the camera, telling Eggman to face him. He breaks the wall, what took so long, and Eggman flies off while Orbot and Cubot are torn to pieces. They're really lucky their heads are still intact and they're still able to talk. Awesome, Steve comes back. That's how you really know the episode's being awesome. And he tells Eggman that he can warp to another dimension. Eggman plans on tricking another Eggman into being his potsy, and he's nice enough to advise Steve to shapeshift into something else. So he turns into a little unicorn decoration. Eggman warps to evil Eggman who's talking about nice science stuff. And somehow evil Eggman already knows what the potential result of them being together too long would be. So why did Eggman even personally warp to him in the first place instead of just sending Steve there? And he easily gets talked into going to Sonic's dimension. Sonic calls him that emo Eggman from another dimension. And he uses a lightsaber, and Sonic spin attacks him to the wall. He quickly recovers from that, and finally, after he keeps missing Sonic right in front of him somehow, because he's a creator's pet, Shadow attacks him and says that his different costume doesn't fool him. Somehow, Shadow immediately believes him when he uses an interdimensional portal and says that the Eggman he's looking for is in another dimension. I'm shocked at this. Just because he has a portal generator doesn't necessarily mean he's telling the truth. It's awesome that they get to fight Metal Sonic. And Shadow moves at him so slowly. And Metal tries to attack him with a weapon and mistook for a broom at first. It seems like the episode has been 100% action so far. Why can't this be the norm? Sonic makes a plan and Shadow refuses to take orders, but they start attacking him from opposite sides anyways. They tackle Metal and he starts flying to another dimension, because apparently he can do that. Apparently they ripped off the Archie comics and he has an engine like that in his chest. The hedgehogs keep running around in blurs because apparently that's fighting and not just running and wasting time. I can't imagine anyone would want to both fight and focus on running. Wouldn't they just be knocked to the ground the minute they get attacked? Amy pushes Tails out of the way of something trying to land on him. Awesome. She threatens Metal, and Metal sends her away with a shockwave from a hammer, and he uses a spin attack to attack Sonic's friends. Then all of them use enter beams on him from all sides to hold him still, and Six uses a stick against his chest to knock him out. Shadow then says that he's no longer satisfied taking revenge on Eggman, and says he wants revenge on the entire universe. Just now? And he's gonna intentionally destroy the universe by putting the two Eggmen in the same place. How'd he know about that? And you'd think he would have wanted the universe destroyed to avenge Maria long before his first episode. It's hard to take a plot twist seriously when it comes out of complete nowhere. Tails plans on piecing Metal back together and using his homing beacon to get back to Eggman. And how did Tails get sent away from him when trying to bring him up? I like this whole dramatic tension. There's a storm, there's dramatic trumpet music, and the color's more faded. Sure, it's convenient that when Metal woke up, he didn't immediately try to kill Tails, and instead tried to go home. Tails calls Sonic and says he can't keep up, and we see Sonic untie the Eggman. Lord Eggman calls Eggman his friend, naturally, and says he'll never forget him. So we can form a bond with him, but not with Tails. And they take off as I wonder why the hell there was a storm and lava, instead of the Eggman glitching out like was clearly the effect last time. Shadow says that he's impressed with the heroes' efforts and takes off. And Orbot says that because of the universal anomaly problem, all of his video footage of the heroes was destroyed. And somehow Eggman is perfectly happy with this and carefree instead of tantruming like the real Eggman would. This episode is too awesome for the show. But seriously, why the hell can't every episode be like this? Or at least most of them. This is everything I want from the show. The action scenes are perfect, there's great tension, it's really interesting, even the music's great. It's like 100% action. So, you didn't hear me getting mad most of the time. I barely even remember complaining about any plot holes. It's easier to forget plot holes when it's mostly action. Episodes like this come out of nowhere. It's a wonderful surprise that I can't believe I'm seeing because it's way too rare for the show. It reminds you of what the Sonic series is supposed to be. Exciting, not boring and annoying. This is what I mean when I say that the emphasis on comedy sucks. Because not only is it not funny if you have high standards, but look at what it's keeping the show from being. This is what it's meant to be, but the writers won't let it. I guess that's my summary of Sonic Boom right there. That and I have problems with the way all the characters are being portrayed. This episode started out mundane as usual, but also pretty brilliant. Eggman wants to be the star of his own video game, kinda like in Eggman the Altered. But somehow nobody wants to play it. Even though realistically you think everyone would want to play it, even if from morbid curiosity. It's a game starring Eggman. Nobody had any problem with going to see a film made by Eggman. But all I learned about it was that the level design looked horribly boring and it required you to get all the collectibles to beat it. I wish that was the excuse people gave for not playing it. But instead Tails and Knuckles passed it up because the graphics weren't realistic and it didn't have motion capture. Everyone knows retro games are just as popular as normal games nowadays. That's why so many indie games look like them. So it starts out like a normal Sonic Boom episode. The minute I saw Shadow in the episode, I knew things were going to be epic. I'm so glad the show gave him another chance. Too bad he doesn't get any deeper as a character. Even though that's common sense, he's still the same band parody from the internet, Shadow. But honestly, I love how entertaining he is. Not to mention how epic his action scenes are. I think being like this really suits him. It's so amusing to see him get manipulated into fighting Sonic so easily. Like he just wants an excuse to fight him again. But I always assumed that he'd get sent into a rage by Sonic saying he didn't care about his shoes one way or the other. But that would have made sense. It's really a shame because they passed upon a great parody joke that anybody would think to make, in favor of having manipulating editing so bad that it makes the hologram that fooled Knuckles and Sonic Underground look reasonable. Look at how awkwardly Sonic's talking in that video. Shadow really has to be like a month old to think this video isn't edited, because nobody would talk like that. Something a lot of people overlook about Shadow is how naive he is. Or put more cynically, what a massive idiot he can be sometimes. It's easier to notice it when you think of it like that. That's why he trusted Black Doom, and why he trusted Eggman, Sonic X, and Archie. And considering he was only a week old when he was ejected from the Ark, it kinda makes sense that someone with the amount of life experience that a baby would have would be easily manipulated and tricked. How much TV has he really watched? It's still stupid though. If Shadow was enough of a petty jerk to try to beat Sonic the last time, why did he even need any convincing? Instead, his rebellious streak caused him to refuse to work for Eggman again, when you'd think he would have been fighting Sonic himself all the time. It's not like he was sent into another dimension at the end of his debut episode. But none of that matters, because the fight scene with Shadow was awesome. And here's why. The music was perfect for it. It involved all Sonic's friends instead of just Sonic, and there was great variety in what was happening instead of just the most generic things ever happening. Like characters actually got swung around and sent flying away. It was fun to watch. Sonic got smacked into some stuff and actually caused collateral damage, which just showed how strong Shadow really is. And Six actually used her staff for once. I never got why she was able to make a dent in those robots with that flimsy thing. I guess she swings it with super strength, but then why doesn't the stick break from all the force that it hits something with? I guess her magic also extends to the stick being super sturdy. Anyways, the characters were all taking things completely seriously. And while Sonic's friends were pathetic in the fight, it was completely justified because come on, it's Shadow. Who would ever win against him? They were lucky he was merciful enough to hold back instead of warping them to the sun, or using his super speed to snap their necks, or freezing time and killing them. So clearly he's not about killing, just sadistically dragging out the fight, beating them up. Like Supersonic if he wasn't ridiculously obvious about it. I guess he doesn't have access to a torture chamber, doesn't know what it looks like, so we can't just warp him to that. And the show was so respectful to Shadow that I don't think he really lost. It's more like Sonic talked him out of it. They were equally matched the whole time. They even attacked the same way. I was too busy enjoying how cool the action scene was to care about fussing over how stupid Shadow was being. Maybe it's because we're not told he planned on killing him. When he started fighting Sonic, it got really boring when they're just running around together. And if Shadow could figure out the video was manipulated so easily just by Sonic saying they didn't say such bad things, what took him so long to get suspicious of that? This is a guy who hated Sonic enough to want to fight him for Eggman the last time, with no explanation. Why would he ever stop fighting Sonic, even if he wants revenge on Eggman? Can't he just keep fighting him and get his revenge later? Well, I guess he cares more about his independence. And he was so mad about being tricked into working for Eggman when he said he was done with that he was willing to put the fight aside for now. But then we don't end the episode by him fighting Sonic. Instead, he just warps away for no reason, perfectly calm about losing instead of being furious. Since when is Shadow a dignified loser? He'd be pissed. Like every time he just leaves with no explanation. It makes sense if he was obviously injured and had to go to the hospital, but no. On the bright side, when Sonic asked him why he was fighting him and he didn't immediately explain everything to him, I remembered how he was just as uncommunicative when Shadow was trying to kill Cosmo and people asked him why. So the show's got his character almost perfect here. Part of his personality is being frustratingly uncommunicative. Like the time he didn't tell Sonic why he was in the ancient base with Isaac the Robot and Archie, and it led to a fight between them because he thinks he's not accountable to him. It's frustrating, but it kind of makes sense for someone so aggressively antisocial and independent. Shadow past SA2 has always had bad social skills, which is why it really should have been revealed that he was an android past that game, because he had a complete personality transplant after Heroes, I guess. All he said to Sonic was that he'll pay for the things he said, but that was so vague. And if he believed him the minute he told him that he didn't say anything bad, they could have avoided the entire fight if they just immediately talked to him. It was a miracle Shadow managed to figure out what Eggman did, because him being fooled by the video would only make sense if he was completely unfamiliar with the concept of manipulative editing. It'd make more sense if it was Sonic who told him, because of his experience with Eggman. Anyways, Shadow gets so mad at Eggman that he tries to attack his door just to take out his frustration on the door. I have to wonder why he didn't just warp inside of his base right away. He knows what it looks like. It'd be much faster for someone impatient and enraged. And the whole time I was just wondering why someone as powerful and fast as Shadow didn't immediately break through that door instead of it being immune to his spin attack. The heroes are always breaking the door to break into his base. Eggman thought to make the most hard door ever, but he didn't do the same for his walls. Well, at least a stupid teenager made up for it in the intimidation department when he actually damaged Doorbot and Cubot. I feel sorry for them. I'm glad that doesn't happen all the time. Maybe it feels worse because I have a real attachment to these characters. I see them as people, not just robots for Sonic to destroy. I'm not used to this like I am with Scratch and Grounder, who are at least being punished for having annoying voices and trying to capture Sonic. Doorbot and Cubot, this is the exact opposite of what should have happened to them in the final episode. They should have finally left Eggman. But yeah, that's how you do comedy relief characters in tense scenes right. You know that there's tension when even the comedy relief characters aren't safe. I was delighted to see Steve again. The whole time I knew him, I was wondering if some grumpy, no-fun Sonic fans hated him and think he's too ridiculous. I just think his concept is awesome, even if his voice sucks. But I'm not shallow enough to never forgive him for that. It's thanks to him that we actually got to see Lord Eggman again. Realistically, he'd never call himself Eggman though. Come on. Anyways, Eggman wants to use the other Eggman as a patsy for Shadow to beat up. But fuck logic, apparently. Because when Shadow gets told about the mix-up, he immediately believes him and walks into the portal he created. Granted, I'd rather see him be gullible than Knuckles. Why couldn't they just have had Shadow send him flying and give him a bunch of harmless cartoon slapstick? That'd be Sonic-like, that'd be action-y, and it'd be the perfect karma for someone ruling over his planet like a tyrant. AOSCH would have gladly done that. But no! Somehow Shadow is open-minded enough to immediately believe him when he's never heard of the concept of parallel universes before, and he just said that a different outfit doesn't fool him. For all my problems with this episode, it put AOSCH to shame. It's just so shockingly lazy of the writer and animator to just skip over Shadow fighting him. Granted, it makes sense for someone naive from being really new to the world, but I tend to picture Shadow as really untrusting and paranoid. Sure, he isn't Eggman, but that could have just as easily been Eggman dressed up in a disguise. Or Steve. Fortunately, the episode promptly gets hype again when we see Metal Sonic, and he's taken completely seriously. Needless to say, the action scene here was fun to watch too. I liked how he punched the ground. And while it was boring to see him and Sonic just run around, I loved how he was defeated. It reminded me of Sonic the comic, and that's always a good thing. She actually got to do something with her staff. That's actually important. She got to be taken seriously instead of just a spouter of pointless jokes. I respect her if she was like this most of the time. But instead, there's even episodes that forget about her. There's just so much that I love to see. And it was so great for the tension that Tails got sent flying to a wall. Just like Shadow did to him in Sonic X. I wish that callback was intentional. Eventually, Shadow decides to get revenge on the entire universe by trying to put the two Eggmen together to destroy it. I really wish we were told where this came from, but thankfully this is a character who already has a tragic backstory in all the other continuities. So rather than getting angry and completely baffled at how to know where this is, I just assume it's because of Maria. Like he was a ticking time bomb the entire time, and we're lucky this didn't happen earlier. I wish he said that though. Instead, the writer just assumes we know that. What about the kids watching this show, who have this as their main first exposure to Sonic? My nephew's at that age. Shadow would be so confusing to new fans. All I was thinking was, what took him so long? Why didn't he try to destroy the universe months ago if he's so mad at humanity? Why doesn't he just explain himself? Why doesn't anyone call him out on it and ask him for his reasoning? Like, I don't know, Amy? Isn't she supposed to be the girl character? Also, the whole excuse for the impressively high stakes here is that having two versions of the same person together will cause the universe to eventually destroy itself. Somehow. You know you've really fucked up when Ken Penders made more sense. Archie never even mentioned this. And how did Shadow know about this? But the problem here is that the last time this thing happened, the universe wasn't affected. It was just the two Knuckles, who kinda glitched out and started disappearing. That's all I remember happening. And all of a sudden there's a storm and the colors get faded and there's lava in a forest. The entire source of the conflict is the show breaking a rule it established earlier. A continuity error. The show barely has any continuity as it is, and it still manages to screw it up. It makes sense if instead this was the result of Shadow using the Chaos Crystals finally. Or at least it could be the result of a Doomsday device of Lord Eggman, who thankfully showed up again just to be a completely wasted character because no mention of him ruling the world was even made, and we never saw the Freedom Fighter group again. Anyways, instead it just has to be because of the Eggman being together, because that's something the heroes could actually resolve. So Lord Eggman is reduced to someone tied to Eggman in a cave somewhere, and Sonic follows Metal Sonic to him. It was kinda sweet to see Tails actually fixing Metal Sonic. And it was very nice of him to not immediately try to kill Tails when he woke up. You'd think he'd punch him instead of flying to the wall. He doesn't even justify it as he's so appreciative of him fixing him that he gives him a pass. He might not even know who he is. He could have explained that if he was allowed to talk. But then he just wastes our time with generic villain dialogue that pads things out, doesn't develop his character at all. Lord Eggman was so wasted as a character here, they might as well have been a completely different character. I completely forgot about his laser blade fight with Sonic, and just remembered it now. How did neither of them even get hurt? Sonic could have had one of his spines cut off. Wouldn't the story have made more sense if instead, Shadow was causing the storm by teleporting thunderclouds to here? And he teleported the lava here? He could easily use his Chaos Control to try to destroy the world. Then you could see Amy talk him out of it. Just like she did in SA2. Only now we could have a chance to have her give him a good speech instead of one painfully cringeworthy. We could have seen Shadow being an active villain, actively using his power against the world in a way you'd expect an Omnicidal villain with teleportation powers to. We could have seen him explain why he's doing this. Real people try to justify their actions, and maybe he'd want to brag about it, and try to justify it to himself. Then Amy would tell him that there's a lot of good people like Maria out there, and he'd just be doing what her killer did billions of times over. Sure, talking him out of it might seem too easy, but one, this is a fan service show, so you'd expect an SA2 reference. And two, it wouldn't seem that easy if we got to see him force push Amy like he did to Chris. If she ended up covered in bruises and passed out by the end, it'd feel like the victory was more earned. Which is why they did that with Chris when in the game, Shadow wasn't violent with the one reasoning with him at all. And she was very lucky it worked out for her. So we could have had people trying to reason with him during a fight, and eventually they get through to him. Instead, we got to see Tails fixing Metal Sonic in a few seconds each when you think he wouldn't have the time. They had time skips between them, not showing you anything about how he fixed them. And somehow Metal Sonic didn't instantly get to Eggman with Sonic speed, long before Sonic could ever hope to start trying to follow him. In the ending, again, Shadow had a confusingly serene and dignified response to his plan failing, rather than just warping the heroes away and doing it all over again. It's like he changed his mind about wanting to destroy the world and it was all just an impulse he ended up regretting. And he's too proud to apologize when he really should. They're very lucky he's not a sore loser. Does Boom Shadow even care about anything at all? If he really cared about destroying the universe, he'd have done it by now. Instead, he just gives up? The only reason he tried to do this is for Maria, but apparently that's not enough of a motivation for him to warp the heroes away and try again. When you have time to think about it after you watch the episode, when you think about whether the plot makes sense to have happened the way it did, it just doesn't. But you know the episode's great anyways when I was too invested in it to care. There were a few nitpicks I had about the plot being forced, mainly thanks to Shadow being such an easy puppet for the writer to manipulate and not explaining himself. But I was so excited and impressed by the tone and the well-crafted action scenes and how fascinating the episode was to even care. I still feel like this was a fantastic episode, especially by Sonic Boom standards. There are ways that it should have been rewritten, especially the big climax. But the overall tone and feel of the episode was so tense and epic that I got swept up in the action and enjoyed it too much to be mad. Every moment I was stunned and baffled at Shadow, who was made up for by him being a badass. Sure, it's different that he's a full-on villain when he became a hero in the games, but everyone knows that SA2 was where he was at his best, which is when he wasn't a hero. And I love this because it's different. Generally, they got his personality down perfectly. They knew how to have fun with the character, while still keeping him a threat. If he was just a pathetic wimp, then I'd be mad, because I wouldn't be taking advantage of the fact that it's an action series. Like this is. This is the biggest shining example of why Sonic Boom needs to be like this. When the focus is just on failed attempts at jokes, I'm just bored. The pacing feels glacially slow because it's just the characters talking and I just want to get to the excitement already. But 90% of the episode is just talking, with almost no fantasy or sci-fi in sight. When most of an episode is just the characters exchanging dialogue that's too bland to make an impression on me, when it's doing nothing but trying to make me laugh, while the characters are in boring mundane situations that don't take advantage of what makes the series Sonic, I get bored. So I'm more likely to get frustrated by the plot not making sense and the dialogue being dumb, because I wasn't super invested to begin with. I was just sitting there blankly trying to watch the show and waiting for something to happen. And because I'm left with nothing to do, the only thing I can do is nitpick. When I get bored, I get detached and stop taking the show seriously, which means I'm much more easily annoyed. Because when something sucks, it's really obvious when there's nothing good to distract you. It's like a bad smell in an elevator. Compare that to the action-focused Season 3 of Sonic X. That's like a bad smell in the perfume sampling area of a mall. I was so swept up and invested in the tension and excitement and engaged in how interesting everything was that I could forgive the stories being badly written because most of what surrounded the story was good. This episode I took seriously, so while it couldn't stop me from seeing the problems with it, I still enjoyed myself. Even the generic phoned-in action scenes that show... It's like a Sonic story without enough action and tension is like a skeleton. It's like a magic show with no music or special effects. Your focus is entirely on the magician and his trick, so that trick better be really good, because there's no smoke and mirrors. If you make a mistake, we're all guaranteed to notice. But if the show as a whole is entertaining, if it's constantly keeping you engaged, then you won't really mind if the actual tricks aren't as impressive. You're too busy enjoying the show. This plot wasn't free of plot holes, and I still caught most of them before typing the summary. But because it's got a focus on action and tension, I was being entertained. I was invested in the emotion of the action scenes, so even though the plot wasn't perfect, it says something about how well done the episode was that for most of it, all I was thinking was, wow, this is way too good for the show. Since when does it have episodes this awesome? And that's why the show's done things wrong. I love that it actually has epic episodes. I never thought it would, but they just stand out as a testament to how much better the show could have been if it wasn't doing nothing but appealing to the worst fans. The ones who want the series to be nothing but bland comedy. The ones who say that this is all the show is ever meant to be and you're an idiot if you want anything better. The ones who are terrified of Sonic having tension and stakes. How did they ever handle this episode? The universe was going to be destroyed. That's pretty dark to me. That's not even mentioning what Eggman said Shadow was going to do to him. So I hope this episode got a good reception, but it'd be really hypocritical to love an episode like this and then complain about any other time Sonic gets serious. It doesn't make someone an idiot to want the show to be cool in a franchise that got successful because of cool. It's not a crime to expect better from the show. especially not when it's almost universally praised. So what better live up to the hype? And so far, only episodes like this really get me hyped, because that's what Sonic should be. Not that all episodes with the usual tone are bad, plenty of them are great, like Cabin Fever, but this is where the show is fantastic, so there's no excuse for it being so rare. Because I'm pretty sure the same fans who demand nothing but comedy loved this episode just as much as I did. Who wasn't hyped when they saw Shadow and Metal Sonic show up? Why have a bland comedy when you can have this?